Welcome to another episode of our Learning from AI Leaders. Dinesh and Mohammed with you. We are co-founders of Rapid AI for Learning, and we're very pleased to have Kelly Cassaro, the Chief Learning Officer at Generation, on the call. Kelly, can you please tell us a little bit about your work at Generation?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Dinesh and Mohammed. So, I am the Chief of Learning at Generation. So, I lead our curriculum and instruction team globally. So, we create the online, hybrid, and in-person learning experiences for so far over 130,000 alumni across 18 countries. And our goal is to support them into a career launching job.
Amazing. I've got experience working alongside you at Generation,
Yes.
which I absolutely love. But Kelly, you mentioned previously that educators don't need to feel overwhelmed by AI and that they do actually have a sense of agency. So I wonder if you could elaborate on that for us.
Sure. So, in this age of AI and our generative AI revolution, I would like people to feel ownership over their AI learning journey. It is a fragmented training market right now. I think it is overwhelming, but I would like individuals to think about what are the small steps, the things that I can do to own my learning, to cut through the noise. So if you just do a quick search of like top AI podcasts, you will see it's all like tech leaders. Tech leaders,
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
this one, of
Yeah.
course, but
Yeah.
I think, and even the ones that say this is beginner friendly and we're going to tell you about I find that they're overwhelming. There's jargon and there's a lot of information about the interworkings of
Yeah.
AI. And I think it can easily get to a place that it's not productive. And there's a lot of research out there that institutions and employers haven't actually instated AI training. So it depends. Financial Times says a third. There's others that I've saw that have said half. Some have plans, but again, it's very difficult to actually feel like you do have your own agency or your ability to own your own AI learning. And I always tell people, like, you have the best technology, your brain, and you want to get into the driver's seat and not have a blindfold on. And so I'm happy to break down some of the steps that I think could be important on this journey. And I think individuals have a responsibility, and I think institutions and employers have a responsibility. But what you can control is owning your own AI learning, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make, Kelly, and I do think individuals do have to take some ownership of it, and that they do have to sort of invest in their own learning cloud and that whole mentality of learning is earning. But do you see that there's any sort of partnerships happening where employers could potentially sort of co-fund some of the this learning experience? Are you seeing that happening at all?
Yes, I mean, definitely. But I think it's about what is the quality of that learning experience, and is it practical, hands-on, and is it related to the work that you will actually be doing? And of course, there's a link to policy here as well. I can get into some of our research. We've researched our alumni on their experience using AI because a lot of them are in entry or mid-level roles across the globe. We also have done some mid-career research, but I think that part of it is that they're either doing some AI in secret because they don't want to share
Mhm.
how it actually is automating or augmenting or supporting some of their work, or there are policies against it. So they're using it on their personal computers, and some
Yeah.
aren't using it at all because they're not encouraged to do so, right? So there is that fragmented experience going on, but that
Yeah.
practical use tied to how is AI solving problems for you and not just using tools for the sake of using tools is
Yes.
incredibly important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Certainly resonates with us, Kelly, because that's the approach that we take. It is very much around the processes and not just going straight to the tools and platforms for the answers.
And as you said, Dinesh and I, we call this using AI under the table. So that everyone's doing it. So, we specialize in the education space, and many educators, whether it's higher ed or vocational school education, but higher ed in particular, you hear commentary like, we should be banning AI, we should be stopping this, the students are cheating. But we all know the academics are using it secretly, whether it's to produce content or source videos or to, create lesson plans. So what advice, Kelly, would you give to education professionals to future-proof their career and enable them to be successful and prepared for the AI world?
Yes. So one comment first, which is that AI is here whether we like it or not, and it's not going away. Like it's going to adapt and evolve, but we have to get on the train and we have to make sure that we can adapt alongside this learning journey. So when you ask like, what are things that educators can do in particular? So I think anyone, there are a few steps that I've learned that I think have been quite effective. And the first one is to examine your own narratives around AI. So when I say like you should own your AI learning, what's the first thing that you say? Like, do you say like, it's not my job to do that? Or do you say, I'm afraid of it, or I don't have time, or I'm not really that good with technology, or I'm too late. Everyone else understands this. Like, what do you say? If you say, I'm ready, fine, move on to the next step. But if you say any of those things, it's examine and then consider the reframe. Dinesh and I have done a lot of work with behavioral skills and mindsets.
Yes.
And I do think that that's the first step because it is not your fault if you have any negative connotations associated with AI. It's scary because you look at the news and it could say
Yeah.
it's going to take your job or, it's going to change everything or the role of the teacher will be totally different. And I think it's about the reframe. And then it's about, and I could talk a bit about some of the reframing language. And then it's about testing, trying on the tools, understanding the problems that AI might solve, and then being really thoughtful about the implementation of it and continuously learning and adapting along the way. Because to me, it does have a real chance in education to help free up time for us to be doing the human things that we want to do. It
Yes.
frees up time to make better connections with learners and families, frees up time to be doing hopefully more of the creativity. And we need to teach a little bit more about how do we judge and evaluate the outputs? How do we still critically think along the way instead of just saying, I'm going to use AI to do the thinking for me? Like all of that is so important. But to me, it's about first starting with mindset. So, for example, if you say, like, I'm too late, you're not too late, right? It gained mainstream in November 2022, and everybody is still learning and it's still adapting. We're still adapting, it's still changing. Or I don't have time. Like, you have to make time. Like, developing that fluency through like small moments can really add up to a lot. And so, and if I'm not that good with technology, generative AI is specifically for non-technologists to be using it in ways. And if you can also, it's more conversational now. You can use, voice feature to speak into certain tools. And if you still don't feel comfortable with computers or technology, you'll know where to start, like learning how to upload a file or those kinds of things. So I do think the accessibility is there. We've done a ton of work areas that are known to be more susceptible to the digital divide, like in Ghana, our generation Ghana, and we've done a ton of AI focus groups, and there is a ton of excitement, learning, testing, and just leaning in to the AI revolution and leaning into their own learning.
What about the other end of the spectrum? What about education leaders? I think it's quite universal, but generally speaking, within the higher education sector, there's this sort of a narrative around, we've got to stop the students from cheating. It's a very narrow band sort of dialogue
Yeah.
or sort of messaging. What message would you have to education leaders about, in terms of how they can accommodate or adopt AI into their
Yeah.
practices or into their
Right.
policies?
So again, because it's not going away, because I believe it's incredibly important to prepare individuals for their lives. To me, career is key to setting people free, to allowing them to to care for their dependents, to have lives that they wish to have. Like, I believe career is an incredible solution, and AI is going to be in your career, right? AI is going to be everywhere. It's preparing for the future of work. And so a few things I'm thinking about is, one is we've created an AI manifesto, and there's examples out there online, but thinking about what is it? What messages do you want to send in your institution around AI? Like, and look at some of those and think about which ones are you comfortable with. And how do you reframe the cheating? And instead of reframing it, saying things like, AI can be used as a tool to accelerate learning. It is not a replacement for learning, and we are going to teach critical thinking skills. And so once you start to name those statements, like what do we believe about AI, then you can say, what does that mean for our like policies or systems around it? And really be sitting down with your leaders to say, what are our values already as an organization? And if our values are lifelong learning or whatever, guess what? Like, AI is part of that.
Mm.
And what are our values? How do we tie like statements or manifesto or whatever you want to call it to the AI journey? And I would encourage the leaders to learn themselves and are there other quote unquote AI native universities or institutions where they can just go and shadow and see how it actually has been supporting learning? Can they talk to their primary beneficiaries on how are they using it anyway? What are the strengths and what are the limitations? Because of course, you could tell I'm an optimist. However, it is really important to know and understand the biases and the issues that are out there with AI, right? The outputs are only as strong as what the data sets, and we know the data sets have bias. And so it is about teaching questioning and judgment and these things that are important, not just when using AI tools, but important in your life in general. You're always, for example, in the manifesto, you say you're always questioning the output. You're never copying and pasting it. You're saying, does this make sense? You're saying, why is this true? What are the sources, right? You're really, really investigating and you're thinking critically. You're not just taking it at face value. And if you don't have the manifesto, or you don't have, here's what I believe, and you don't have the what's possible, what are the great things that are possible? What do we want this to look like in a year from now? If you don't have those things, then of course you're going to be scared, right? You're seeing all of this out there, but it's about owning and saying, as an institution, here's what we believe. We know that it's here to stay, and we know that it's evolving, and it's impacting every single industry, and it's impacting so much around us, just like the advent of, the internet. It's new and different. So how are we going to equip people to use it in ways that are supportive, that still you have the ethical considerations, and you're really driving your learning forward?
Yeah,
It
Kelly.
sounds like a manifesto is a whole nother podcast that we'll have to
Yeah,
book you
it
into
does.
a second conversation.
Well,
It
I have
does.
people to
Kelly.
talk to about it. Federico
Absolutely.
Rosso and others on my team are doing a ton of work for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. And I really like that you talk about the reframing, because that's really powerful. And that whole idea of, instead of just looking at the threats, looking at the opportunities. And yeah, they're looking for AI. They're saying AI is cheating rather than looking for learning in AI. And I think, like, looking for learning in your students. And you talk about the importance of those behavioral skills and mindsets, critical thinking, creative thinking skills, problem solving, and so on. And I know that generation refers to the importance of those behavioral skills and mindsets as being critical, those BSMs. For people in the education and training space, what BSMs are critical to develop that, to develop in addition to AI literacy, but also does that hold the key for sort of curriculum and assessment redesign to engage students more and then to actually future-proof them and get them ready for the workforce?
Yes, absolutely. So there are so many behavioral skills and mindsets that are important when you're considering AI learning and in order to prepare yourself for the future of work. For me, I think first of all, adaptability is incredibly important because you have to adapt because things are evolving. And part of that is like what we talked about with AI is cheating. Well, there's a radical acceptance we have to take, right? And then we have to say, okay, like it is here. And then what are the skills competencies that I can demonstrate to show that I am adaptable and I can evolve in the ever-changing nature of, advanced technologies in general. But I think judgment, I mentioned before, like the ability to assess the AI outputs, question results, make informed decisions, like that to me, like judgment is so important in this age of AI. Knowing when to trust it versus override it. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. You just have to empower yourself to do that. Obviously, I think data literacy is like a given in all of this, but understanding and just digital literacy in general, and ethical awareness we talked about. The like creativity, I think, is irreplaceable with humans. So storytelling, ideation, emotional intelligence, empathy, those are in higher demand now. And so we can activate those skills in us, which I think are really, really important. And then getting that like digital collaboration, like the human plus AI and like the tool mastery, getting that like comfort using new platforms, no matter what they might be, for design, for writing, for coding, for reading. Those I think are really important. And again, like being open to that new tech because it evolves fast is important. Yeah.
It sounds like, Kelly, you've been reading our business secrets,
Oh.
because because at Rapid AI for Learning, we have what we call a micro methodology, and
Oh, nice.
there's an acronym for that called REARI, RI, which an acronym for research, evaluate, apply, revise, and improve. And what that particular methodology does that we've devised is to actually encourage and facilitate. It necessitates critical thinking. It
Yeah,
requires you to ask questions about
great.
how you want to use AI, so in the planning phase, and then how you apply AI, and then how you assess the results, and then reconstitute those results for your future practice. So it's really refreshing to hear you talk about that it sounds like we're saying the same thing, that AI really doesn't diminish critical thinking, but in fact can enhance it.
Yep. And I have to say, like, I'm not surprised. And at the same time, I don't think that true like educators and the learning experience is being integrated right now in this, like in the AI training or learning journey. Like it has been a passion of mine my entire life to try to elevate the voices of educators more, especially in my country. Educators are not respected enough. And I think we know how to
Us too.
learn new things.
Yeah,
We know how to help people learn new things, right? We
yeah,
just
yeah.
do. And it is in our DNA. We've 2 decades I've been working very hard on that across so many different age groups and so many different contexts. And it's right now like people need to turn to teachers, to educators to say, how do you help individuals learn a new, big, scary thing? And like, how do you do it? Because we have tools, systems, frameworks, and approach to break it down. And that to me is so important. Like educators, if you're listening to this right now, you know that you hold the keys to help people learn AI. So hopefully that could get people more motivated to say, yes, like this is something new. And even if I don't know everything about it, I know how to help people learn.
What would you say, Kelly, is the role of education leaders to facilitate this, to facilitate the capability and capacity of educators to implement AI in a way that supports learning?
Yeah, so I think it's about saying, okay, what problems is AI gonna solve for us, depending on in my institution? What does that then mean for like the tools that we're gonna use, and what would the end result then be? And then it's thinking about what is the overall learning experience. I have found that allowing people to have open exploration of tools in a low stakes environment is really important. So Dinesh knows our head of online learning, Matt Constantine, and he is doing something called 3-week cycles, which I think is so important. So what that entails is their roles are getting together. So like roles are getting together, and they are exploring, and it's over 3 weeks, a new tool. So in the first week, they're setting up their account, familiarizing themselves with the tool, and then doing some individual independent testing, just, open exploration. And then the like positions, the people in the same role are meeting to discuss like potential use cases. So it's more of that like exploratory learning. Then the next week, they're testing it on the job, they're sharing the use cases, they're meeting to discuss their experiences. And then the third week, they are still testing it on the job, but they're evaluating the effectiveness, right? Like how effective is this? What time might it save for us? What is the real learning coming out of this? How is it meaningfully supporting work? And I think those types of like structures, setting up those types of structures, and then having time for obviously micro learning, meeting together, reflecting, all the things we as educators know is important, is great to get people really comfortable using the tools and understanding how it's going to improve the work.
I think we need you getting in front of our education leaders in Australia and speaking to them about some of these practices, Kelly. Very, very productive and very innovative approach to trialing and testing different AI tools.
And one more thing, I'm sure you all do this as well, but thinking about the different things that it could do. So I'm sure that you've seen, it's like the different framework of automate, accelerate, augment. And I think having that sort of framework is kind of important too. So automating routine tasks like summarizing meeting notes, or accelerating creative processes like drafting a proposal, or augmenting decision making like offering alternative perspectives or brainstorming. So sometimes for some learners, having that like categorization of application, automation, acceleration, augmentation could be really helpful, because then you're critically thinking about, okay, what am I applying in this moment? What bucket does it fit under? And that could help some people too to create those mental models.
And Kelly, you mentioned before about generation being in 18 countries, and I'm just interested to know, are you finding different attitudes from, I guess, the learners coming through the programs in those different countries to AI? Because we are seeing research, we are seeing that in some of the developing countries, for instance, that people are seeing AI as more of an opportunity than a threat, and an opportunity for them to perhaps democratize learning and perhaps sort of level the playing field a little bit. Not for everybody, but certainly we are seeing that is coming through in some of the research. Are you seeing differing attitudes in countries that generation are in?
So we're definitely seeing what you said. So the countries that are more susceptible to the digital divide in many ways, if they have power, connectivity issues, things like that, limited access to Wi-Fi or whatnot, we've been blown away with just the like, we're embracing it. We are, diving headfirst into it. We've seen that for sure. And there's also some research. So from a learner perspective, yes. And then there's some research that we've done, which you could see on generation.org, on how different countries, comparing like Europe and the US, with how employers in particular are embracing AI or AI training. And so it's similar, maybe slightly slower uptake in Europe compared to the US, but similar. So I think it also depends on like, are the employers taking it on? Are like, how is the society in general, different institutions embracing it as well? But we're seeing that what shocked me, I think, the most with our alumni survey is that they're using it anyway, all the time, even if they're told not to, like they're using
Yes.
it. So it is here and people are using it. And I'll be honest, like I was a little nervous thinking about like in 2022 putting it in some of our programs for coding, because obviously it could be dangerous. But then I quickly thought like, okay, they're doing it anyway, so we need to break it down and teach them how to responsibly use AI in coding, or they're going to do it anyway and it could be dangerous. So it's incumbent upon us to teach it. Like I feel a responsibility to teach it,
Yes. Yeah.
and to teach it well, and to ensure that ethical considerations are in place. So to me, that is just the most important thing is that it's happening anyway. People are using it. They're using it. They are also using it inadvertently, right? On their TV and different tools that they're using, AI is in it. So it's really important that we just figure out a way to teach
And
it
they're also
well.
using it secretly as well, aren't they?
Yeah,
You've
of
got, the
course.
same academics waving their finger at students, don't use AI. This is not appropriate, but they're using it under the table, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yes. I mean, we heard that time and again.
And by the way, just on your point of training, but just by coincidence, the rapid AI for learning, that's exactly what we do. We teach ethical frameworks in the use of AI.
Right. Responsible and ethical use of AI, that's right. And Kelly, look, you've discussed previously that mid-career and older workers are susceptible and vulnerable when it comes to AI. And, we've seen the McKinsey research. But I guess there's two parts to this question, and that is, and I think you've touched on what the workers might be able to do to safeguard themselves. But what should employers also be doing to help their mid-career older workers as well?
So I think it's really evaluating their own biases around mid-career workers and knowing that it is that they are an asset. So our first mid-career research report in 2023 showed that even though employers are more reluctant to hire mid-career workers, the same employers said that their mid-career workers performed the same or better than their younger counterparts, right?
More
So, and
reliable.
this,
Yes.
yeah, and the
Yeah,
specific data, we
yeah.
have on the website, but it's really mind-blowing, right? So it's really about anytime you are checking your own biases and saying, okay, am I saying something that might not be fair? And we even learned like the alumni that are mid-career older workers that have used AI consider themselves power users. So it is just, and to me, generative AI is more accessible. And so it's really important for employers to know like that we are all in this together, no matter what. We are all in this together. And there are many people from any age group that are going to have lots of different experiences, right? Humans are unique, and some people have more excitement or experiences with computers than others, regardless of age, right? So it's just important to think about this as we're all going to go through this learning experience together, like regardless of background and age and all of that. And we have seen just the ability for mid-career and older workers, obviously, to like use this quite well and to really enhance those human skills that we talked about before with empathy, critical thinking, etc.
Kelly, there's the sort of feedback we get is that, our kind of niche is working with people in the education and training industry and upskilling them to accommodate or implement AI into their practice. But the feedback we often get from them is that their management, their education leaders are not very supportive. They're not taking a lot of action. They have quite negative conceptions around the use of AI. Um, what advice would you give to education practitioners across the various sectors, whether it's school or vocational or academic and so on? What advice would you give them to try and optimize their opportunities to learn AI and integrate it into their practice?
Yeah, so this is tricky, but probably not that dissimilar to other types of initiatives or things that educators want to do or know that's best for their students, right? So I would say that it's about finding those maybe one or two administrators or someone who would have an ear to listen to the impact that AI has had on your classroom in particular, your experiences. So saying like, and gathering data, like, okay, I used custom chat this custom GPT to support in lesson planning, and it saved 30% of time or whatever it is, and here's the output. And then instead I was able to do XYZ to like help this student in their like learning plan or whatever it is, right? But trying to show real evidence of progress and then trying to encourage or manage up to say, here is what we could do as an organization, or even suggesting like, could I lead a lunch and learn, or could I like help lead a portion of a workshop to show this one tool, right? Because it just takes a little ripple, right? It takes like, here is how we have found that AI can help us meet our goals, right? You have to speak to, this is going to accelerate our mission anyway. This is going to accelerate the goals that we have. Let me show you how it did in my little test, in my little pilot. And then like, what's possible? How could we potentially scale this thing? So I think I know that every institution and situations are nuanced and different, but hopefully that one suggestion could potentially help someone.
At Rapid AI for Learning, we always talk about, especially in our training, the idea of being the AI influencer in your workplace, and to look for those sorts of opportunities that you're talking about, just small ones, just sort of small use cases, and take it to your manager and say, look, this is what I'm doing. Would you like to hear about this? And what we found with people that have come through our training programs, by default, as a result of doing our training program, go back to the workplaces, and they in turn become that AI for Learning influencer in their workplace, because their employer recognizes that they've done some training, and by default they start saying, well, we're thinking about doing this, or changing this assessment, or rolling out this curriculum. You've done an AI course for learning. What do you think?
That's spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly, I was just going to ask you, because I think you mentioned something about this previously, but I'm thinking about the educators who are feeling threatened by this. So thinking about the teachers and the learning designers, curriculum managers, and so on, who see this that AI could potentially take their jobs, or that they're sort of worried about that. And of course, we know that there are plenty of opportunities that are going to be there, and because obviously you've got the early adopters, but then you've got people who are skeptical or feeling a little bit under siege about this.
Yeah, so look, the bottom line is that like I understand why some people may feel that way. And when MOOCs, like massive open online courses, came out, if you look back on all of the like articles, it was like the role of the teacher might be gone forever, like it was everywhere. And we all learned to know that MOOCs did not replace the human teacher, right? Like we know that. And at the same time, I can also say I don't have a crystal ball, right? And we have to be comfortable with change. That is life in general, right? Like this is massive change management that we're all undergoing together. And to me, it's like, it's overwhelming if you look at the whole staircase or the whole potential like world of possibilities. Of course, you could be like, maybe this, maybe that, but it's just important to do the next right thing, right? It's just important to say, how can I put my energy instead of worrying, which is like useless, I think, instead of worrying, you are then saying, what can I do to improve my life and the life of students right now? And I just think that's what we have to do and think about. We have to prepare for the future of work. We know that advanced technologies are going to be part of it. We know that the AI that we know now will look different soon, but we just have to lean into it. And I think all of the worry is not going to be productive, even though I get it. But we've kind of been here before when people thought that teachers could be replaced. And I'm actually not seeing that as much now as we did with MOOCs. I'm seeing like, yes, it can automate certain aspects of lesson planning or whatnot, but I am still seeing that people are, I'm not sure in Australia in particular, like what the vibe is, but I'm seeing that it's like, we get that the human piece of teaching is really, really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. Very powerful messaging there, Kelly, to finish up for us. But thank you so much for joining us today on our Learning from AI Leaders podcast. It's been fantastic having you be a part of this, and I'm sure our listeners would have enjoyed this as well.
I sure hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
I certainly did, Kelly. I feel like there's going to be a part 2 and a part 3 with Kelly Cassaro.
So happy to come back. Thanks
the manifesto
so much.
next time.
Thank you.
I have good people for that. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.